Hello, thank you for taking the time to watch our submission for DataFest 2024. We are Team PS5 consisting of Daniel Baptist, Holly Bill, and Lauren Seib from the University of Notre Dame. We did a chapter-by-chapter analysis on specifically the high school level book from Course Cata, first analyzing student success and engagement, then analyzing student opinion, and lastly, looking at an evidence-based recommendation from an external source. So first, analyzing student success and engagement. We took a look at the end of chapter questions accuracy throughout each chapter and found this trend. And then we lined this up with the proportion of time spent engaged next to the end of chapter score and found that students were more engaged. When students were more engaged, they did better on their end of chapter questions. So we are trying to find some recommendations on how students can be more engaged in order to do better on the questions. We found in chapter 5 and 10 that students scored 9% and 11% better on the end of chapter questions compared to the prior chapter questions, when on average they scored 3% worse as they went through the rest of the chapters. So we took a look at these chapters in the book and found that chapters 5 and 10 have less subcategories than the rest of the book. So our first suggestion for Course Cata is to make the chapters shorter. Next, we looked at if students actually watched the videos that are in chapters 4 and 5, and we found that 70% of the time, students weren't even pressing play on these videos. Looking at chapter 4 and 5 specifically, we found that students scored 2.5% worse on chapters with videos compared to the rest of the chapters. So students seem to perform worse on the chapters that had videos in them. So then we questioned if the students that did watch the videos did better on the end of chapter questions, or if there was any difference. And we found that there was actually no statistical difference between the people who watched the videos and the people who didn't. So our suggestion is to completely get rid of the videos for the Course Cata course.
After examining student accuracy in their end of chapter questions and their engagement, we looked at their student opinion on a chapter-by-chapter basis by looking at the checkpoint pulse responses. So at the beginning of each chapter, there are the checkpoint pulse questions aimed to analyze the students' psychological frames of mind based on their performance in the previous chapters. These questions ask students to answer on a scale from 1 to 6 how strongly they agree or disagree with a statement, 6 being strongly agreeing and 1 being strongly disagreeing. The different questions relate to students' perceived confidence, which is their expectancy, interest, which is the intrinsic value, utility value, which is their usefulness, and their cost, which is the time commitment. We analyzed the overall chapter-by-chapter opinions via a k-nearest neighbors Euclidean distance calculation to see which chapters had overall similar perceptions, and we plotted this within a shiny radar plot scaled from 0 to 1. Overall, we found that concurrent chapters contain similar distributions and perceptions. For example, in the plot on the slide, chapter 6 is most similar to chapters 5, 7, and 8. However, this diamond-shaped distribution of responses after each chapter remains consistent across every chapter, so the post-chapter opinions can be easily generalized over the course of the entire book. When visualizing the overall distribution of responses, questions 1, 2, and 3 have very similar response distributions and overall mean responses. These questions are also similar in that they are positively framed and relate to students' feelings. However, question 4 has a vastly different distribution of responses. Not only is this question different in that it is negatively framed, but it also pertains to students' actions and external time spent, not their internal opinion of course content. Further, because it is framed as a negative question, it could be difficult for students to interpret and understand it relative to the other questions. For example, if they disagree with a statement, it corresponds to a confusing double negative because they would disagree with the fact that they are unable to put in the time needed to do well in the previous chapter. So it's hard to make data-informed decisions and recommendations to Course Cata based off of the mean response to this question in comparison to the other questions. Based on this, we recommend that Course Cata reframe question 4 to better align with the previous questions and be more easily accessible to students. This is supported by external research, as the Journal of Assessment and Evaluation in Higher Education found that responses to positively worded items yield statistically significant higher means than responses to negatively worded items. A proven difference in wording affecting responses alone is enough to suggest that Course Cata reword question 4 to better align with the other 3 questions. This includes making it more positive and opinion-based. An example could be, I feel that I had sufficient time to master the material in the previous chapter.
Alright, so now we'll look at some external data, which looked at other online data science courses in order to get some evidence-based recommendations. And so first, the data included 4 other online courses, which were STEPIC, Coursera, Udemy, and Skillshare. And we made a graph of the ratings that students left of each course. And we saw that STEPIC had the highest rating of 4.8 out of 5. Well, less than 1% of the students left a review, so it wasn't very representative. And so we took a look at the second highest rated course, which was Coursera, which had a rating of 4.5 and had a significant number of students rate the course. And so looking at this, we would suggest that that course Kata implement some of Coursera's teaching techniques in order to help student learning. And so doing some research into Coursera, we saw that they give out certificates to students who complete the course, which could be something that Course Kata could also do. And by giving certificates to students, it will incentivize learning by providing a sense of accomplishment, as well as improve engagement and enhance mastery of the material, since students would be more involved if you set requirements in order to complete the course, such as having a minimum amount of time spent for each chapter, or answering a certain number of the end of chapter questions, either by number or by accuracy. And so having these requirements would keep students engaged and help their learning. And so just kind of give a summary of what we've run over. First recommendation, making the videos, making the chapters shorter, as well as getting rid of the videos in order to engage students. Then also aligning the checkpoint pulse question 4 with the other questions, and also allowing students to earn certificates. And that's all we have for you guys today. Thank you so much for listening to our submission.